was an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Saga, chapters 4, 5, and 6. They call them chapters. Some of you may call them issues. I call them straight fucking bonkers. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha, and thank you very much to Maxwell for commissioning this next episode. The last episode that I did for Saga, which was the very first one, was in October. So it has been a minute since I was reading this, and I'm kind of surprised, actually, because when people saw I was covering it, they all seemed to get really excited. But then everybody just sort of vanished, so I don't know why nobody else commissioned any more of it. But I'm really glad that he did, because I was going through some old images before the new year when I was looking at my site, and I saw the Saga banner and I was like, damn, nobody followed up on that. That's so weird. And I was so delighted when I saw this come through over my Christmas vacation. So thank you very much, Maxwell, for continuing the coverage of this, because I wanted to know what happened. And it's a real... there is something to be said for the fact that it being a comic makes it a slightly faster read. But because I'm not used to reading comics, and because this is such a strange one with so many details that you really need to pay attention to, in some ways it's a slower read. So, there's not as much text, but there is a lot that goes into the absorption of the story, if that makes sense. So the first episode that I did covering Saga was technically called a voyeur episode, even though most voyeur book episodes, I actually read the chapter live on the air for the very first time. And that I'll be doing again on Tuesday of next week with a new book called Blood of Elves. But Maxwell emailed me and was like, listen, I don't want you to live read it exactly for the first time, but if there's a way for you to visually go through it while you're talking about it, that's kind of what I want. And this led to me figuring out how to screen share on Crowdcast, and it lets me screen share from one particular app, and I'm able to screen share directly from Kindle, which is where I bought the issues, and zero in on particular panels, which is just the coolest thing. So I'm doing that again this time, but I'm not doing it the way that I did last time, where I really focused in on stuff. I'm just wanting the people in the Crowdcast to be able to follow along with the stuff that I'm talking about. So the first one might have been a little difficult to listen to versus watching it. But this one should not have that problem. So I just wanted to alert you guys. So when I make a reference as if I'm looking at something right in front of my face, I am doing that because whoever is in the Crowdcast right now, which right now is Kyle and Maxwell, hello. I was just busy and needed to recoup before commissioning the next 3 chapters. Oh, no problem on you, Maxwell. I was just surprised because other people sounded like they were really excited about it. So I was just a little puzzled on that. Okay, here we go. Chapter 4 begins with the lying cat, whom I had forgotten about and is so delightful. And we are with him and the will. And this begins a section that right away I stopped and went, what the fuck is this? Because, if you follow the Facebook page for the show, you'll have seen that I screenshotted this and shared it guys, what is this? Because straight up, it's 2 women wearing thigh-high fishnets and platform heels, but all they are legs and heads. There's no torsos, there's no arms. Their heads rest directly on the top of their thighs. It is the most insane, horrifying thing. Like, and I find it really interesting that this artist definitely meant to not make this look sexy. You can tell. Like, the legs are really, really skinny in this sort of, like, strangely off ratio way where the proportions aren't right. Their faces, because of the way the legs connect, they kind of have this, like, triple chin thing going on. The expressions on their faces are really over the top. It's all just so unappealing. And when they say, "Welcome to Sextillion," which is the name of this planet that we saw him heading towards from the last episode. And I had been like, I guess this is in some ways what I expected, but this is basically like if Los Angeles was allowed to indulge all of its worst impulses and they were given unlimited technology and funding to just make like nightmares happen. That's what this place feels like to me. So yeah, and I find this interesting that, like, again, we get the sort of circumstantial reminder that freelancers are respected as like a whole other class of people. So one of these women is white and one is black, and the black woman calls him Mr., and he corrects her and says, "Actually, the Will." And the blonde one says, my, a big bad freelancer. I hope you're not going to tie us up and spank us," which just like, I really enjoy both the fact that they are not appealing and that they are making like the same garbage, terrible jokes that aren't funny and are not even witty that you would expect somebody like, you know, somebody really tame to make, in other words. "I'm afraid your pet will have to stay back in long-term parking, sir, but I promise there will be a wide variety of livestock for you to copulate with once you're down below." Which, why is it phrased that way? I hate it so much. Livestock. And he tries to say that Lion Cat is his sidekick and not a pet, but they basically insinuate that he wouldn't be able to come in at all if he didn't leave his cat behind. And Lion Cat is very irritated by this and kind of gives him a look like expecting him to stand up for him. And then the Will does not do that. And Lion Cat has to go away and take his gear with him because they're not allowed to bring weapons in either. And the woman that is staring at him says, you have to get rid of your weapons before you're allowed to come inside. And she says, "You want to come, don't you?" And like raises an eyebrow at him. It's super gross. Like, it's not sexy at all. It's not funny at all. It's just really uncomfortable and I hate it. So then we go back to Alana and what is the name of this girl? Idris, who is the half blown up ghost girl. And where we ended it with Alana and her husband and their half demon looking baby that I think has horns, was that he had been injured and in his like throes, Isabel, thank you, Maxwell. In his throes, he says that to tell Gwen I loved her. And of course, he mentions, like, he doesn't just say Gwen's name. He says, "Tell my bride. Tell Gwen I loved her." So that's not the best thing. Apparently, he had never even told Alana that he had been married before. So that's kind of a huge thing to keep to yourself. And Isabella is saying that, you know, as much as he looked like he was really badly injured, the snow is apparently helping him out somehow. Like, I'm not clear on that. This magic crap takes time, Alana, but as long as the snow keeps up, I think your husband's going to pull through. I'm not sure how that works. But, yeah. Really, the two of them. Ooh, I went way too far. Hello, Kindle, stop. What are you doing? Go back. the two of them have a serious talk after he wakes up, because first of all, I guess Alana didn't, or Isabel didn't show up until after he had like passed out. So he's at first shocked to see this ghost girl with her guts hanging out, which is understandable because yikes. But then after Alana kisses him and is like, I'm so glad you're okay, is immediately like, hey, so what about Gwendolyn? And we find out later that he was engaged to another girl that he was like high school sweethearts with, basically. And that he went off to war and started to have a lot of like second thoughts about whether or not this was even what he wanted to be doing and whether this was the right thing to do and all of this stuff. And he is writing this to her and getting back these kind of rote responses about doing his duty and fighting the good fight. And he just realized that he was growing and changing and his perspectives were shifting, and she was not. She wasn't changing at all, and that they didn't really have anything in common anymore in the end. So he wound up just sort of like ghosting on her, I guess. Like but he never talked about her to Alana. And that's the part for her that just is like, how could you not mention this to me? And he says, you were the one when I brought up like previous partners that said we should just leave that in the past. But she points out rightfully, that's not just a partner. That's somebody that you loved, that you were going to marry. That's really different. And I think she's totally right on that. So yeah, that's on you, dude. Like, there were all kinds of times that you wanted to bring it up, and you just were really quick, obviously, to take the excuse that, oh, well, that's the past, so I guess I just don't have to talk about it with you. Maxwell is saying my audio is coming in and out. I'm sorry, Maxwell, I don't really know why. I'm looking at my GarageBand, and it's totally stable. So there might be something going on. It might be the screen share. Maybe if I stop screen sharing. Well, I kind of did share with y'all. Oh, Kyle's saying it's fine for him. All right, well, then it's on you, Maxwell. I'm sorry. But, yeah, so I think Alana is right in that if a dude tried to tell me that they were like, well, you said that this was all in the past, I would definitely side-eye him and just basically be like, yeah, you just didn't want to talk about it, and this was a perfect excuse, and you could even pretend that it was my idea, and that was just, But that's a little bit later. So anyway, we go to these scenes of debauchery that the Will is walking through. It's really funny, actually. The first, it starts off with a couple of women making out. One of them's wearing, one of these helmets. And then we have this, crowd of winged women who are in midair fucking. Some of them have strap-ons on. Some of them are eating the others out. Some of them are just making out. It's, this weird, angelic combo of it's hellish and angelic, and again, not really appealing. I'm just looking at it and I'm just kind of I guess. Then he walks through this area where it's just a bunch of people at the bottom of the stairs having kind of more regular grounded sex, one could say. He walks down this avenue and you see somebody dressed as what looks like to be a dinosaur with a giant purple dildo sticking out of the front walking by, which I could not stop laughing when I saw that. Just what? Okay. And then a couple of different windows, there are rooms where people are performing. And there's one where there's a sort of centipede looking woman. And not human centipede. There are no heads anywhere. It looks like it's just a bunch of torsos, tons of arms and titties. And her tongue is a foot long. And then a pile of dudes that are in a pyramid formation, on each other's backs, wearing what look to be the kind of hats that marching bands wear when they're in parades. And a woman is whipping them. I don't know what's happening there. And then there's a really fat woman who is being both fucked and titty fucked and being fed. And he's just walking past all of this with a completely impassive look on his face. Like, he does not seem impressed at all. And this guy walks up to him and says, "You look a little disappointed." And he says that, "I thought Sextillion was supposed to have everything, and all of this feels a little safe." And this dude is like, "Oh, I see what you need. You need somebody who'll do whatever you say. You need a slave girl. Let's go down here." And I should mention that this dude is creepy looking as fuck. He has a sort of vaguely Japanese looking outfit. Like, it looks like he's wearing an obi and like, I'm not sure what you would call the skirt, like a kilt, but you know, that's obviously not the right region of the world. But his head is like flat and his ears look like fins. And his mouth stretches almost all the way from one ear to the other. It's really freaky looking. And when he said, "You need a slave girl," I immediately tried to believe that it was not what it looked like. I try, like, you know, slave girl, I'm thinking, okay, somebody playing the role of a slave girl. But we find out that that is not actually what it is. It is very much a real slave and a real girl. Very girl. Very, very, very young. 6, I think, is what she says. It's the worst. We'll get there. All right, so then we have the conversation between Alana and... Oh, right, I forgot about this. Alana and Marco, when they're talking, she says, "Well, at least tell me that you weren't lying about me being the hottest woman that you ever had sex with." And he says, "I swear, Gwendolyn may have been tall, but her hips were boyish, not womanly like yours." And she says, "You know, for a pacifist, you sure beg to get stabbed a lot." Which, I get what he means, and I do consider that a compliment, but I understand that the wording of that, if I were on her end, wouldn't be exactly what I was looking for either. All right, so we go back to the Will, who's being led into the secret downstairs area. And this guy tells him that we're in the inner core. This is where we keep our most valuable employees, all hand-picked from camps across the galaxy. Camps? Refugees, mostly. As soon as the wings and horns finish up with a planet, we start recruiting. "You decent in there, slave girl?" "Anything but, master." I taught her to say that. Anyway, have fun. And then the door opens, and it's a literal child in, like, torn up clothes. And she says to him, "I'm 6, and I'll do anything you want." And the Will says, "Okay, close your eyes then," and smashes this dude's face, his whole head, between his 2 hands. Which, I really enjoy this scene for so many reasons. Not the least of which is the fact that it was so out of the realm of conception to this man that this guy was about to literally crush his skull between his hands, that he doesn't defend himself at all. The Will says she's a goddamn child. And he says, "So what? You're a freelancer. You murder children. And he's in the middle of his sentence. Like, he's verbally defending himself, but he's not actually physically concerned yet. And the Will just squeezes, and his head is gone in the next panel. And there's just like a fountain of blood and bone. So, that's a pretty intense amount of strength to have, that you can make that happen. I assumed that these people, the freelancers, just had, like, really special training. But it seems like this is a special ability. Like, this feels like a superpower. And I'm interested to see how that develops. And, you know, we get intermittent throughout this story POV from the baby. After she has grown up, she's like looking back at her past, and we get her sort of voiceover, for lack of a better way of saying it, during, like, in these panels. The Will wasn't the first bounty hunter to come after my parents, and he wasn't the last. Like every freelancer I had the misfortune to eventually meet, he was a fucking monster. But as my family was about to learn, some monsters are worse than others. And we see the little girl hugging him, and she says thank you. And we find out later that she was sold into slavery by her uncle to pay a debt that they could not afford to pay. And they lied about what she was going to be doing and said that she would be doing like cleaning and stuff, which of course you would say, because yeah, you're trying to get people to cooperate with you. And I'm sure her uncle had an inkling that that isn't exactly true, that that wasn't going to be how it was. But you want to believe what you're told when it's something that horrifying. So we go back to Alana and Marco, and they have been traveling, and they had sort of settled for a moment while he changed the diaper, the baby's diaper. But they get snuck up on by a ship that has like basically stealth mode on it. And it's a bunch of Alana's people who are about to try and take them in. And I had forgotten that they're being searched for by this fucking robot prince, who I just can't get a handle on what exactly is even going on with the robot prince. But we find out before like the confrontation really gets started that his royal princess wife is preggers. I love the fact that they're wearing like really classical fairy tale style clothing. Like she's got 3/4 flounce sleeves on and obviously like a huge bustle and skirt and everything. It's the weirdest. And yeah, she tells him that she's pregnant, too early, but we'll be happy with either, won't we? Even a girl. And he says, of course we will. I'm so happy. This is the happiest I've been in a bloody, what is it? Latrine on bloody cleave, right? So yeah, it's really weird that they're like robots, but they can procreate in that sort of way. But all right, like do whatever. And he's in the middle of talking to her about this when somebody busts in and tells him that they have found something. So yeah, I had completely forgotten that Prince Robot was like on a separate search for these two that was outside of what was going on with the freelancers. So we have this confrontation between Marco, and I say Marco rather than Marco and Alana, and the soldiers, because Alana gets put out of commission pretty quickly, and that's what spurs Marco on. I guess because they say orders are to pacify, and she says that means kill, Marco. Pacify means kill. And the soldiers point their weapons and say light them up, and she gets hit, which I thought was, potentially an actual wound, but we don't see any blood. We don't see anything. So I don't know if it's just a stun or what, but Marco completely loses his shit and basically winds up taking out a bunch of these guys in like 30 seconds. It feels like the way that these panels go. He doesn't kill them, I don't think, right? He's headbutting one, he punches another, he smashes another across the face, elbows another in the throat. He is about to kill. And his wife stops him and tells him that's enough. And he's really relieved that she stopped him. He's just like, thank fucking God, because I could have done something I would really regret. So yeah, I guess she was just stunned. Because what she shoots him with, it's the same yellow light, and he's obviously fine. So we go back to the Will, who is trying to escape with this little girl. I don't think we find out her name, do we? And he's trying to escape with her and goes to long-term parking. And they get interrupted by this fucking crazy-looking woman called Mama Sun. Mama Sun looks like... have you guys ever seen the illustrations of what Pokemon would actually look like in the real world? And they're like mildly horrifying. Mama Sun looks to me like what I imagine a crystal gem would look like if you decided to illustrate her in a way that a human being would really look. She is alarming. And she has Lion Cat, and she's holding Lion Cat hostage in exchange for getting her slave girl back. And the Will is like, how the fuck could you do this? She's a kid. And when she's like, you murdered my finest groomer, which the fact that she calls him that is just so, And he says, you mean her pimp? Pederast had it coming. So it's morally acceptable to execute people of any age, but only to make love to a select few? To which he says, if I have to explain the difference, you're already too far gone. And I think that is a fair point. Yeah. I mean, honestly, there are times where I feel like if a kid is badly enough abused, are they better off dead than like having to live with that sort of trauma and damage the rest of their lives? Maybe. It depends, but maybe. I'm letting you leave here alive as a courtesy to your union. But if you think you can just take my private property... and then she tells him that everyone who is hired to Sextillion is injected with a security elixir. Removing an employee before the end of her term will cause the potion in her arteries to harden. Death is painful and guaranteed. And he looks at Lion Cat and says, is that true? And Lion Cat just goes, "Mm." So apparently, yes. And when he says that he's going to call the cops, she's basically like, oh yeah, my best customers. I am so concerned about that. Lol. Oh, that's too much real world for me, Jesus. Slave girl would be dead if it weren't for us. Here she gets food, shelter, a steady income. If it's about money, let me buy her. Now that could be arranged. You just need to pay the balance of her contract, roughly $650,000. That's more than my ship cost. I've also confiscated the white card you left with us for incidentals. We'll call it even for the damages. That sucks too. So yeah, not only, first of all, he didn't get to fuck, which is the whole reason that he showed up to this goddamn place, this fucking godforsaken hole. He kills a guy and has to pay for having killed him. And he doesn't get to save this little girl who has the momentary hope of being saved and then gets dragged away. I do not want to know what happens to her after she's recovered, but I can't imagine it's anything good. He winds up later trying to get the money together, and that doesn't go so well. So Alana and Marco steal the ship that their enemies had shown up in. And it's actually kind of like a sweet moment where they're talking and joking around. And the baby starts to giggle, and they're both like, oh my God, really? Like, she's just so new that they didn't think that was possible. And they're talking about, like, the pros and cons of violence, and Marco is just saying, like, that killing doesn't do any good because it just creates a continual cycle. And that's one of those things that, like, I used to believe and just don't anymore. Sometimes killing is the only way, and I really don't want to believe that, but I do. And who should come upon the crew of defeated soldiers who are tied up with some sort of, like, weird electronic lasso but the Stalk, who apparently is dead. I don't want to believe that. I don't want to think that that's actually how this is going, but I don't know why she wouldn't be. Unless her heart is, like, way down near where her legs begin, and her heart isn't in her chest like a human's heart. Maybe? Like, fingers crossed? She's so weird and cool, and if she's gone forever, I'll just be really sad. So, yeah, she's on the phone talking to the Will, and she's in the middle of him asking, like, whether or not he can borrow some money from her. When they get the drop on her, one of the soldiers and Prince Robot, he says, don't move a muscle. And she's still in the middle, like, on the phone. And she's got like her phone in her hand, and the other soldier says she's reaching for something. And Prince Robot just blasts her right through the chest with some sort of like light cannon. It's crazy. The blast is like 4 inches in diameter. And she goes down, and the Will is still trying to talk to her because he doesn't realize what's happened. And it's just like, I just don't want to believe she's dead. So I am not in mourning. I am not sad right now because I think that she's going to pull through. I don't know why. I have no evidence to support this claim. I just don't want it, okay? And also because like the Will's already had a really bad day, and it would be super cool if that wasn't something that he also had to deal with. All right, so back to Alana and Marco. They parked, I guess. I'm not really sure why, actually, because we just saw them, and she says today's a pretty good day. So they're trying to get to the rocket ship forest. And where is... Oh, right, here it is. Because I was like, I know that Isabel comes back. Here she is. Because Isabel is gone during the day, and then apparently at sundown she reappears. And Alana says... Because when they come up upon the rocket ship forest, of course they think that they're going to be walking into an actual forest. And there does not appear to be anything here except the broken, burnt, stunted, like stumps and trunks of trees that used to be. And Isabel is like, well, what are you talking about? Like, why do you guys always just... see whatever it looks like it is and not what's actually there? And she says, you lifers believe everything you see. Us floaty types are masters of misdirection, remember? You really think we wouldn't hide a few saplings? Your girl has no idea how lucky she is. I would have loved a treehouse when I was a kid. And we get to see the raddest looking rocket ship. So, of course, rocket ship forest, I'm not thinking, is a literal forest that grows rocket ships. Because why would I ever think something that insane? Why would I ever think that? I wouldn't, because I have no imagination, apparently. But this appears to be exactly what this place is. She calls it a sapling as well. So how big do these fuckers get? And I just can't, like, I just need to take a pause here for a second. I have in the past bemoaned the fact that I don't have the kind of imagination that I had as a kid. And that there are a lot of things that, like, I either resist the concept or I realize that it's so far beyond what I would ever have thought of that it's embarrassing to me. And this is one of those instances where, to me, the fact that somebody thought up, well, what if, there were like wooden rocket ships that just like grew? I would have laughed them out of the room and just been like, you are a fucking moron. What kind of sense does that even make? Well, the answer is it doesn't have to make any fucking sense because it's a comic book and you can do whatever you want. So you can have people with 1960s television set heads and human bodies who can reproduce like mammalian reproduce. And we can have rocket ships that grow literally out of the ground. And it's fine. Who cares? Get over it. We're going to do what we want. I admire that so much. Like, it's just really like that is something that I want to work on. Like that might be part of like my New Year's resolution is just to open up my mind and try to come up with the craziest shit. Like basically Mad Libs stuff, like they went to a forest where they were looking for a rocket ship. And there was like that kind of thing. There was a new ship growing out of the ground. Like, this is just so, and the design of it is so cool. Y'all, those of you who are only listening and aren't able to see this, it's a shame. But I just like this ship is so wild looking because, like, you know, it's made to look like it's wood, but it's not like it has branches exactly. It doesn't have leaves. It's not really tree-like. It's just wood-like. So the whole vibe of it, all of it, is just full of surprises. Maxwell is saying, one of the great things about the series, coming up wonderful, crazy stuff without having to explain it. Yeah, totally. Like, I don't even know. So then we go back to Prince Robot, who is looking down at the body of the Stalk and is realizing his mistake because now he realizes that she is a freelancer. And the other soldier says, I'll back you up in the after action 100% that she drew down on you first. And she literally, like, was holding a cell phone and this guy shot her. This is just so much like cops shooting black folks on the street, like, because they were holding a fucking phone. And the Will is still trying to talk to her and is saying, I know you're pissed, but hear me out. I need your help with a girl. And he's in the middle of saying this when Prince Robot picks up the phone and says, hello, are you this creature's representative? I am Prince Robot the Fourth. I'm sorry to be the bearer of unfortunate news, but your client violated protocol and was justly killed in action. What did you say? I'll be taking possession of her vehicle per Article 11, but any personal effects can be forwarded to Landfall if you'd like. Listen to my voice, boy. I aim to murder you, right after I murder everything you ever loved. And then he hangs up. And Prince Robot says, good Lord, psychotics, the lot of them. Prince Robot, what even are you? Poor the Will, sitting there like, he just tried to save a girl. He couldn't do that. His ex, who he's still in love with, gets killed literally on the phone with him. And he didn't get to have any sex today. This is a very, very bad day. Poor Lion Cat is looking at him like, oh, buddy. So, let's talk about this fucking tree rocket ship. First of all, the door to it is like an Irish love knot. The door to it is a really cool design. And it turns out that you need to sacrifice something in order to get it to work. And rightfully, Alana is just kind of like, oh my God, what more do you want from us? And Isabel's like, listen, this is not my rule. This is the way the ship works. She says, you want to go someplace new, you have to show it you're willing to leave something of real value behind. And Marco pulls out his sword, and Alana is like, dude, no, you just took out a whole platoon with that sword. And his response is, when a man carries an instrument of violence, he'll always find the justification to use it. If we really want to escape this war, we have to stop bringing it with us. But I thought that sword's been in your family for 1,000 generations. It's still just a thing, Alana. Besides, you're my family now. And he breaks it over his knee. When he breaks it, this white-blue light shoots out from it. And I am not entirely clear on whether that is because of the sword or if that is a reaction to the rocket ship, like, feeling the energy of that sacrifice. I think that it is the sword itself because of what happens a little bit later with his family turning up. But all of the entwined roots, it looks like, that created that love knot that formed the door pull back in response to him breaking his sword. And they are able to get onto the ship, which is really awesome inside. It has a foyer. We find out later that it has some of the best water pressure in the shower that Alana has ever experienced. It's just like the whole place is sort of like a Shangri-La inside. And when they're saying like, well, where are we going? We haven't seen the control room yet. They start taking off. And Isabel says, dude, you don't steer a rocket ship. You ride it. Ride it where? Hey, at the end of the day, a rocket ship is just going to lay down roots wherever it wants. But if it likes you guys, it might be open to suggestions. I've been so consumed with finding transportation, I hadn't even considered a possible destination. We have the entire cosmos at our disposal. Where do we even begin? And Alana says, well, if it wouldn't be a huge hassle, I'd love to visit Quietus. He says, the old lighthouse planet? Why? And she says, you're the one who said it's never too early to start thinking about a kid's education, right? I want our daughter to meet the smartest person in the universe. Which we find out a little later is the author of that terrible-looking romance novel. I think it's called A Nighttime Smoke. That we saw Prince Robot was questioning that prisoner who looked like a rhinoceros about it. I don't know why she thinks that he is the smartest person in the universe. I don't know what's going on with that, but it's super weird. Meanwhile, Prince Robot is going to the finding the Stalk's transportation, which is this really wild-looking ship that looks like it's made of bone. And he approves of it. He calls it stylish. And he's in the middle of checking this place out when he gets a phone call from Special Agent Gale, who I'd forgotten about. He's like way back in the first opening pages of this, I think. And there are a couple things happening here. First, the fact that Prince Robot killed a freelancer is a really big problem. We can't just off them indiscriminately. Even the Coalition relies on them for the occasional odd job. And then he says, from the looks of it, the mercenary I shot was working for the Moonies, hunting down the same unholy union that we are. Reef High Command knows about the baby? How? I have no idea, but its parents are vastly more capable than your initial analysis suggested. Marco, the father, is a force of fucking nature, but it's the mother who really frightens me. And he says, it's the mother who really frightens me, as he's taking out that awful romance novel. And I'm just like, that is such a weird combo of sentences. Like, she really terrifies me. Look at this weirdo romance novel. I'm just like, what? If you want to be home in time for a certain joyous occasion, you'd better make goddamn sure your targets never get off Cleve alive. Understood? Threaten all you want. It doesn't change the fact that your lovebirds have likely already flown the coop. If I was able to secure passage off this world, I have no doubt Alana and her brood did as well. They could be literally anywhere in the... And then he opens the book and sees the author in the back and realizes that they probably went to Quietus, which I don't know how he makes that leap exactly. That's a huge, like, I don't know. I guess the fact that she was so obsessed with the book, because, like, if you guys remember, when he's questioning that other prisoner, he says that she basically, like, brought that book with her everywhere. So obviously her obsession with it is known, but that is such a specific thing for, like, visiting the author of a book. It's one thing to be obsessed with a book. It's another thing to be, like, so obsessed that you just turn up where they live to meet them. I just don't know how. His name is D. Oswald Heist, I think is the name. I'm having trouble reading it on the screen, but Looper nominated author of over 40 novels. Looper nominated. Didn't get his Looper, apparently. And then we get the kind of voiceover thing again. Pointing at the rocket ship, it says, so yeah, this is where I grew up. Most of my childhood was spent clinging to the feathers of a dulled arrow blindly fired across a starless night. It was heaven. Which, it does kind of look like an arrow. It's just the raddest design. This is this rocket ship is awesome looking. So, then we get the interruption by the grandparents. Alana gets out of the shower and she's in the middle of just saying, like, wow, that was one of the best showers I ever had. The lights go out, and the only thing that could cause that to happen, Isabel says, reverse photosynthesis. It's how rocket ships communicate. It's detecting exotic matter. We've got magic incoming. And two horned beings in armor suddenly appear on the ship with them. And they zap Isabel. And she explodes into, like, blood. Like, she's gone, I think. And I'm super bummed about that. Poor Isabel. Like, I feel like the Stalk isn't quite dead, but I don't think Isabel's coming back. That looks like a really final explosion. I don't know, though. Maybe you can't die once you've been killed. Maybe that's not possible. But they are using magic, not a fucking gun, so who knows? And they start to retaliate. Like, Alana uses the gun that she's got and fires on the person who just killed Isabel. And they start to go at one another, and Marco has to stop. And he is speaking something, and I know somebody mentioned last time in the chat what this language actually is, but it feels like a combo of Latin. I think I had said Spanish, but I think that's just the Latin root that I'm getting. And because what they're saying is obviously like, no, don't hurt her. And they're like, Marco, is that really you? And he says, yes, that's my wife. This is my baby. And then my grandparents came to live with us. And you have the grandparent just standing there, slack-jawed, going, oh. I'm not sure they knew what had happened to him, if they thought he was dead. But obviously, the fact that he has taken up with Alana is probably not something that they were expecting. So I'm wondering if they have the same feel about interbreeding that everybody else seems to have. It's Esperanto, which was a constructed language derived from Latin. Okay, Kyle, thank you. So his grandparents, apparently, like, that magic can just draw them right onto the ship. It feels like the ship should have some kind of security system that prevents this sort of thing from happening. But, I guess nobody's perfect. I have no idea what this will lead to, though, because, the way the voiceover goes, my grandparents came to live with us. Obviously, this isn't a little visit. Obviously, this is going to be like a thing this is how we live now. This is what we do. I do really enjoy the weirdo armor that they're both wearing, and the fact that his grandmother, or his mother, these are the baby's grandparents, Marco's actual parents. His mother is wearing armor that is not, like, super feminine in any way, because it looks just really cool. And their families aren't really something that I even thought about or took into consideration, but now it's got me wondering what's going on with Alana's family. Do they know what's going on with her? Are they okay? Like, did anybody know what was going on between her and Marco before they, like, got involved with one another? Like, because Alana was part of the army. I don't know if they're conscripted, if that's like, you just become part of the army when you're on that planet, or how that worked. So I don't know who she even has, like, contact with anymore. I'm just really curious about a variety of things. So, okay, I feel like I covered pretty much everything that I wanted to mention this time. We got Maxwell and Kyle in the chat here. We have one other person. I'm not sure who it is. But does anybody have any questions for me before I wrap this one up? This is a really fun section, though. You know what it is? So, combo about the Stalk. I want her alive because she's just a cool character. I also don't want the Will to have had such a terrible day. But also, I want the Stalk to be alive because I want her to get back in touch with the Will and for his focus to no longer be on avenging her. I want his focus to be on saving the little girl. And I feel like the Stalk's death is just going to distract from the thing that I really care about, because the Stalk is dead. Avenging her is all well and good, but it's not going to do anything for her. The little slave girl is alive, and you could potentially save a lot of other slave girls, slave boys, as well. So I want him to focus on people who are alive and suffering instead of on his ex who died. So that's part of why I'm hoping for the Stalk to still be alive as well, because I just want his priorities to be straight. And that's not an easy thing to do when you loved somebody. I still can't get a handle on what I think of Prince Robot at all. Like, I just don't know what the fuck is going on with him. Oh, Melanie's here. Hey. I really like that you're covering this. I've had this graphic for a while, but this is getting me to read and really enjoy it. Nice. Yay. That's cool. Yeah, Owen has all of them. He has like the actual paper version. And I really enjoy reading it digitally because you can zoom and it directs you exactly where to go. And I am such a, I can be so OCD about illustrated copies of things with getting like fingerprints on them and bending them too much and whatnot, that it, like reading them in that way gives me anxiety. So reading it digitally takes all of that out of it. No, that isn't a factor how I treat the actual material, if that makes sense. All right. Well, if nobody has any questions, then I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming to the Crowdcast. Thank you again to Maxwell for getting me started on this really bizarre journey. It's been a lot of fun. And for doing something that led me to discovering a new function, which is to have the Kindle app as a screen share. That's pretty cool. And yeah, I'm hoping that somebody else is going to pick this up if Maxwell can't, and I can get to read some more because I really want to know what the fuck happens. And I really want to know if the Stalk is actually alive or if I really just like accept things. So, all right, everybody, thank you again so much. And if you're interested in commissioning something, you can go to unspoiledpodcast.com/commissions. And I have a new setup as well. If anybody's interested in purchasing a voyeur version of something, that is now 2 separate listings. You buy the regular episode and then you buy the voyeur add-on for like an additional, I think I did an additional $15 for book or TV show and an additional $25 if it's a movie. And that way people can book 2 different dates, one for the Crowdcast recording and one for the actual live watch, so that they can hang out with me on camera, or not on camera, but they can hang out with me while I'm on camera watching the thing. So yeah, there's a few little changes like that. And I have raised my prices, as I think I announced to everybody that I was going to be doing. So be aware of that. And thank you all again so much for your support. It's just like, I'm just really surprised at how much this has blown up, and I'm really pleased, and it's going as well as I could ever have hoped. So thank you all. And I will see you soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.